Welcome back, everyone, to Morning Line on this Wednesday. Nick Barris along with John Harris with the Tennessee Firearms Association. Taking your phone calls this morning about guns. Do you pack heat? All right. Well, you know, it depends on where and whether or not you have one properly purchased and owned.
You know, it is winter.
Yes, you need the heat, right? All right, the number 737-7587, talking about the fairground issue. We're going to get into some more of the questions about guns of late with much of what's happening on the national stage. Let's go to Joe. Joe, good morning.
Good morning, Nick.
Hey, Joe.
John.
Good morning, Joe.
I think John's already covered the problem with the gun shows at the fairgrounds because Mayor Berry, when she was a councilman, she voted 6 times to get rid of the fairgrounds totally. Everything that's going on out there, she wants to use that property for something else. And the other thing is, I know Tennessee Firearms has contributed to a lot of Republican legislators, starting with Ron Ramsey on down, and they've turned on you like a dog and won't help you do anything anymore. So I'm wondering how you stand on that. One other brief thing I'll throw in here for Nick. And our good friend Paul is fixing to come up. I'm not a Republican, I'm an independent. And as Judge Judy says, everybody's got 2 ears and 1 mouth, and if they would listen closely, they would see that.
I got it, Joe. Thank you. And he's right, as a matter of fact. Paul's our next caller, and we'll get to him in a moment. But you want to comment on any of that with regard to, have you had some disappointments with this predominantly Republican legislature, maybe not doing more of what you'd like to see done?
Well, I mean, Joe makes a great point. You know, Tennessee Firearms Association has been out there for 20 years now, and we have supported candidates for public office.
Have you ever supported a Democratic candidate?
Yes, oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Ben West, Doug Jackson, Eddie Bass. We could go down a long list of them. Right. So we're nonpartisan. We're not Republican or Democrat. We're issue.
Yeah, I gotcha.
And so if they're good on our issue, I don't care what party they're in. But we have had people. Haslam's a great example. When Bill Haslam came and spoke with our group in 2010 when he was running for governor, he stood in a meeting hall in Nashville and told our group that if he was elected governor, he would sign into law constitutional carry legislation. We've got it on video. You can go to our website and see the video. And he has, we know for a fact, been engaged in stopping legislation that has been introduced to implement it. So, yeah, I mean, you know, you look at these Republicans, and not just Republicans, but they're primarily the issue right now because they're in the supermajority.
Sure.
And they make certain promises.
If they could get on the same page, they could do whatever they want.
Oh, absolutely. There's no excuse in Tennessee.
Exactly. There is nothing that can stop them.
No.
But as is so often the case, you think you've got, wow, after the last election, I'm like, here we go. They've got their consensus. They're ready to roll, and they can't agree amongst themselves.
No, they can't. And that's why, unfortunately, I think in Tennessee, you know, a lot of people think about November being the big election cycle. For Tennessee state government and the future of state government, whether you're a gun person or a Common Core, Insure Tennessee, whatever your issue is, the big vote in Tennessee now is actually the August Republican primaries. And whether or not you elect the right Republican for the November election cycle because of the supermajority.
I see what you're saying. Let's go next to Paul. Paul, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Nick, and good morning to your guest there.
Sure.
Thank you.
Look, I was going to bring an olive branch to this discussion today. I'm a southern old Tennessee Democrat, all right? Now, I was going to bring an olive branch to this and come halfway into this discussion, move from my point of view to the middle. But your guest there said that they're nonpartisan and all that. Now, when he said that, now, Nick, I roll my eyes, all right? So let's just cut all that out right now. He supports 99.9% right-wing conservative Republicans, okay? Ron Ramsey is a staunch advocate of his. People like Glenn Cassidy is a staunch advocate of his. Now, let's just get that out of the way and quit telling fields, okay? Now, my point is this. Look, like I said, Nick, I'm an old Tennessee boy. I got a shotgun, a rifle, and a four-wheel drive, all right? I am for people keeping those weapons and a handgun. I'm for that, Nick. Now, the Republicans want you to believe that we're for taking all of those things. That is an absolute lie. That's one of the issues that they try to drum up votes for because they can't get votes no other kind of way, okay? Now, look, What I am against, and I was not for them taking the fairgrounds away from the shows. I was not for that. See, I'm moving toward that way. I think it should have the gun shows there. But what I am against, Nick, and I'm sure your guest is going to be against my statement on this, I'm against them selling AR-15s, AK-47s, M16s, military-type assault weapons to the general public nationwide. Those weapons are for killing mass people, Nick, mass amounts of people in a short period of time. That's what they're for. Nobody should have them, and I don't care what nobody says. And my last point is this. One of the problems is the gun shows, and they have to clean this up. Is your guest said that, well, you can sell a gun to somebody if you believe that he's okay or you believe that he's fine and all that. Well, that is a terrible way to do business. Look, it's against drinking and driving, right? And I know it's against drinking and driving, but that don't mean people are going to not drink and drive, okay? That part of the show, that part of the gun deal has to be cleaned up. And that's my comment, Nick, and thank you to you, and thank you to your guests, and God bless both of you.
Thank you, Paul. You hit on several points there. I don't know.
He did. And Paul raised several interesting points. And one comment was, I mean, just sort of going through his list, was, is TFA really nonpartisan? Mm-hmm. And, you know, when you get a supermajority, you sort of got to vote for people that are going to be able to vote effectively. And so we're trying to influence who the Republicans are that are serving, not Republicans versus Democrats. We want to get the right constitutional people in regardless of party.
Right.
And that's why we've supported for years, you know, Eddie Bass, Ben West from here in Nashville, Doug Jackson from Dixon. You know, our enemies back then were what I would consider to be a lot across the state, urban Democrats that were really not necessarily Democrats, but they were the progressives and the liberals. Okay? And that's really our touchstone. You know, Paul raised the question, going on to the next little topic, about he thinks we need to get rid of the AR-15s and the M16s and the guns that look bad. You know, they're no more deadly than any other gun. They all shoot bullets. And it's interesting, and I encourage people who have that concern or that belief to actually look at some of what the Supreme Courts have said on that topic, because the Tennessee Supreme Court, in a decision called Andrews versus State in 1871, specifically said that what our Constitution protected, the Tennessee Constitution, and the Second Amendment, which did not apply to the states at that point in time, the Tennessee Supreme Court said it specifically protects the private ownership of military-grade firearms, and the issue was, what do you do about the pocket pistol or the things that the military doesn't use? Were they the protected weapons? Interestingly, even in 1939, the U.S. Department of Justice filed a brief with the United States Supreme Court in a case called U.S. versus Miller, where the U.S. Department of Justice stipulated that they could not regulate military-grade firearms, but they could regulate short-barrel shotguns and pistols and things that the military doesn't use. So if you look at it historically and what the Constitution was intended to protect, it's the civilian ownership of weapons suitable for military use. And up until the era of political correctness, the debate was always on, is this particular weapon, the pocket pistol, the concealable gun, the short-barrel shotgun, were those weapons that were suitable for military use? That's where the dichotomy was. And what's happened with political correctness is we flipped. Now the liberals argue your self-defense pistol's okay, your hunting rifle's okay, but you don't need the evil military-looking stuff.
Yeah, I was going to say, because that's what I perceive to be more military, is the M16 and all that. All right, let's just say I've got this, and it turns into a magic wand, and I wave it over your head, and John Harris suddenly becomes the czar of guns, and he can do anything. Is there any line? Let's say what you say goes, and is there any line that you would draw on what you would consider an individual person could own, or would you open it up, and if you want a flamethrower, I guess that's not a gun, if you want a bazooka, if you want you know, black Talon Teflon coated bullets, if you want, you know, fully automatic you know, machine guns, anyone can go get them? Or is there a line in your head anywhere, or would you say, hey, if you're a law-abiding citizen, I don't care if you want a nuclear warhead? I mean, where do you draw the line?
Well, I think where you draw the line is here's how I approach that. we have a constitutional umbrella right now, and Senator Mike Bell from East Tennessee, he made this comment very acutely. He said the Second Amendment doesn't protect, the Constitution doesn't protect just firearms, it protects arms, which included knives, anything that the average soldier could carry and use, okay? And so, you know, what about the bazooka? What about other things? Well, keep in mind
hand grenades,
that up until about World War I, and certainly at the time of the Civil War, individuals owned cannons. They owned artillery. Now, not all of them, but the ones that could afford it could own it. There was no restriction.
like a rocket launcher now?
It was basically whatever you could afford, you could own. There were no restrictions. So the question becomes, under the Second Amendment, if we're going to be constitutionally consistent, are there really allowable restrictions on arms? And the Second Amendment just says, citizens' ownership of arms shall not be infringed. Now, if you wave that wand and I get to do something and change that, I think what we have to have is a discussion about, is it time to amend, restrict, or repeal the scope of the Second Amendment?
Now, is it fair to say that the Second Amendment as it stands, and I'm not someone who likes the idea of messing with the Constitution at all, and the amendments, you know, but, I mean, when that was written, there are certainly weapons today that those folks back then could not imagine in their wildest dreams.
Oh, absolutely true.
So maybe you revisit some. Back then, there were still weapons, and deadly weapons at that, but, you know, there's different ones now that are very, very, you know, more sophisticated. Do you reassess? You know, when you say the Second Amendment covers everything, well, sure, but that was written a long time ago, and yes, freedom to bear arms, but the definition of arms has expanded considerably, hasn't it?
It has. And our frontiersmen, you know, in the Revolutionary War and even in the Civil War, there was great disparity between the quality of arms.
Yeah.
You know, the frontiersmen in the Civil War quite accurately had arms that were more accurate and more lethal at a longer distance than the British had because of the nature of the weapons they carried. And so should there be a limit? And, you know, historically the limit was you can own what you can afford. Now, you know, has that become outdated as technology has advanced? You know, we've gone from the quill to the computer to the text message, you know, and nobody's complaining.
Yeah, well, all right, listen, take a break on that note. We've got more calls for you, John. The phone line's open, a couple still there if you want to jump in, talking about guns, gun regulation, the debate, as you see, gun debate right now. John Harris with the Tennessee Firearms Association. More of your calls when we come back. Stay with us.